Hi, thanks for taking the time with us. Can you tell something about yourself and what you do within the Rise Foundation?
Sure, yeah. So my name's Genevieve. I'm the director of Rise Foundation. So we are an organisation who go out every 2 weeks in winter, every 3 weeks in summer, and we distribute essential items to homeless people. So things like food, clothing. In winter it'll be sleeping bags, medical items, information about where they can find somewhere to sleep, and then we just try to speak to them, find out their story, where they're from, just engage with them and make them feel listened to. Because obviously so many people ignore them on a daily basis.
I think it's hard to know, but how many people are currently homeless in Berlin?
So the last census found that I think it was 2,000 people sleeping on the streets of Berlin, but a lot of other organisations put the figure at more like between 6,000 to 10,000, because when they do the census they just go onto the street and they just count people as they see them, but there's a lot of hidden homeless. Obviously there's a lot of people here who'll be sleeping on friends' sofas, who don't have any fixed accommodation, but you can't see them, they're not very visible. So yeah, it can be anywhere between kind of 2,000 to 10,000 and they don't really know.
And how is this number compared to the rest of Germany or the rest of Europe, for example?
So it's very high for the population, the amount of people who live here. And I know, for example, in London the numbers are really bad. I think it's like around 7,000 too. So they're kind of on a par, I would say. Yeah.
How did homelessness become such a big problem in Berlin, for example?
So when we are speaking to people on the street, I know it's to do with a lot of kind of unstable housing situations for people. So especially with Corona, I've met a lot of people who had a flat before Corona and have since lost it for some change in their financial economic circumstance. We also see a lot of people who aren't from Germany. They're from a lot of from Eastern European countries, and we see a lot of Polish people here, so they may not have the same rights to the benefits that German people have, which means that they end up kind of being forgotten about, and they're often on the streets for that kind of reason.
Today is a really cold day, as you can see. How do these homeless people survive in these conditions?
Well, sadly a lot of them don't, but I know that when we're distributing in the winter we always go down to the U-Bahn stations, because you can always find them sitting there to keep warm. So I think that's a really important thing for them to have access to that at night, because obviously, yeah, like you say, it's impossible. Other than that, when we're giving out things like sleeping bags to them, they're always super appreciative of that. They're just super. I think sleeping bags and really warm clothing is a complete lifesaver for them. I think I saw one guy in Neukölln, he was just sitting there in a t-shirt in November, and we gave him a sleeping bag and he was really thankful, but you're thinking what would have happened if you hadn't found him and given him that, because he'd just be in a t-shirt in the winter. So yeah.
You already said it, which areas in Berlin are have the highest population of homeless people?
So we always focus on Kreuzberg, so Cottbusser is really a very high population of homeless around there. And then my group always goes to Neukölln, so around the S-Bahn at Neukölln, all the way down to Hermannplatz, but all the way along, so Karl-Marx-Straße, Sonnenallee, all around there you see people, especially in the U-Bahn stations as well. And then we have two other groups. One goes to Mitte, Alexanderplatz area, there's a lot of homeless people there too. And then we go to Zoological Garden, so in West Berlin as well. And up to Wedding, because there's some people around there too.
Does the government do anything to help these people, or is it just foundations who mostly help the homeless?
So the government does some, they do some work, especially again for German homeless people. And then they rely on organisations to support that too, but it doesn't go far enough, because we still have this problem, and it's still a really big problem. I think also the government tries to tackle it with housing policy and things like this, but again it doesn't go far enough, because people are still being evicted, people are still on the streets, so yeah.
So how can we, normal citizens, help homeless people in everyday life?
So I say whenever I come across a homeless person, I always at the very least smile at them or say hello, just because a lot of people avoid them because I think it makes them feel uncomfortable. But I think just saying, if you have no money or you have no food, money to buy them food or anything, that's fine, just smile and say hello. Otherwise it's always good to ask them what they need. So sometimes they won't actually need food, they might want a toothbrush, or they might need a bit of extra clothing or something like this, and then if you have the resources to get them what they need, kind of thing. Yeah.
So what was your personal reason to help the homeless and join the foundation?
So I was working with the homeless in London. I was working in a homeless hostel, and then when I moved here, my German wasn't so good. It's still not great, but it's better. But then I didn't really speak any German, so I wanted to still work with homeless people, but I wasn't sure how I could with that barrier. And I just went onto Facebook and found Rise Foundation, and it said, it's welcome for people who don't speak German, because they always put you in a group with someone who speaks really good German. So at first, when I was still learning German, when I went out in the groups, I would try and have conversation, and then there'd be someone there to support me with the translation and stuff. So that was what kind of drew me into the foundation. And then because that was like 2.5 years ago, since then I've become more involved with more of the operations of the charity.
What are like the future goals of the foundation, and where does the foundation want to go to?
Yeah, so it all depends on funding, of course. We're reliant mostly on individual donors or like companies. We have some partnerships with some really great companies, but they're very small at the moment. So it depends on funding, but before Corona, we were planning to do a lot more events for homeless people in 2020. So things like open-air cinema nights for the homeless, big dinners for the homeless, doing like hair cutting, days when they can come get their hair cut. So we had a lot of plans, and then Corona obviously ruined them all. So maybe once we can get that back on track, we'll be doing that. But we'd also like to do this project that she started where we give tokens to the homeless people, which they can take to like Imbis kiosks in U-Bahn stations, and in exchange for the token they can get a tea, a coffee or water. So we started to do that at the beginning of Corona. We'd like to expand that, because at the moment we're only doing it to giving it to people in Kottbusser-Tor, so it'd be nice to distribute that. And then eventually maybe to have like a day centre where homeless people can come, maybe change their clothes, have a shower, that kind of thing. Because at the moment we don't have an actual base. We just go out and we distribute, and that's it. Yeah. So we have a few things, but we'll see how much money we get. Yeah.
This was the interview, and we'll see each other on the live stream. I hope everybody watches and learns something about Rise Foundation, help the homeless, donate, just smile at them, and we'll see you guys later. Thanks a lot.